To this day, I don't know exactly what her mission was, but she played me like a master violinist plays a Stradivarius. I gave her a kiss hello and smelled the finest alluring perfume I ever smelled. The candlelight was perfect, and so was the mood. We were seated at our secluded table where no one could see us and ordered 2 martinis, very dry. Her eyes were flashing like stars on a black velvet sky. We talked of love and sex and what both of our wildest fantasies had always been. We kissed, we touched, we drank, we ate, and we danced. The fire flew from our fingertips and lips and eyes like we had been in love since time began. She told me she had waited and searched since her teenage years for a man that could satisfy her heart and mind, soul and body, and was yet to find that special person that would engulf her like the ocean engulfs the sand on the beach. I was hypnotized, mesmerized, and drawn toward her like a moth to a flame. She told me her favorite book was a book she found at age 13 in her father's chest of drawers called The Story of O, written by a French woman in the 1800s who never wrote another book. She told me that I should go to the bookstore and buy it and read it, and the next week, if I really wanted to know about her deepest sexual feelings and desires, I walked her home about midnight, and we stopped by the river and watched the moon and partook in total passion for about an hour under the bridge. We never had sex that night, but God, what we did have was better than any sex I had ever experienced before. I kissed her good night at her door, and we planned on dinner the next Sunday at the same table. She asked me what I wanted her to wear, and I said a loose-fitting dress with nothing underneath. She said good night. I think the next week was the longest week of my life. I bought the book the next day at Farley's bookstore across from the Logan Inn next to Martine's. I spent several hours that day sitting under our bridge thinking of the woman who had appeared out of nowhere. As I thumbed through the story of O, I realized I was obsessed and addicted to a woman I didn't even know, but there was a connection of fire that burned deep in me that I had never known before. Where was I being led, and why? I didn't care. All I wanted was her, next to me, making me feel this way forever. That night in my room alone in the Logan Inn, I started to read the small paperback book my mistress had told me was her favorite book. I can truly say I've never looked at love and passion the same since I started that book. It is the only book that describes total sexual love and lust I have ever read. It will scare you to death and leave you wondering if there could ever be another person who could ever give of themselves to those depths. What I was in for with this mysterious dark-eyed woman was something I will never understand. It took me about 4 days to read that little book, and by the time I finished it, I was in a frenzy of passion. I tried to call Sherry and could not get through to her. She didn't return the messages I left. By Sunday, I was crazy. She walked into Martine's in a lovely white flowing dress, and we sat at our table and kissed, and she was different this time. She was like a child, pure and scared, simple and special, seductive, but in an innocent way. She looked into my eyes and asked if I had read her favorite book, and I said yes. She asked, "Do you know now?" I said, "Yes, I believe I do, but you'll have to help me. I've never felt this way before." She took my hand and ran it up her thigh, and as I felt the heat from her skin, she said, "Don't be afraid, it's all right." My God, what had I found? Was there really someone who finally knew what I had dreamed of and never found? Was there really another person in this lifetime who felt and wanted the same fantasies that I had dreamed of since I was a young man and wandered through the Oklahoma prairie and laid in the prairie grass and stared at the sky full of buffalo clouds? Was my fantasy woman from my youth looking into my eyes now and making all my dreams come true? Did God direct this woman to me, or was it all a dream? She kissed me then, and I tasted the salt of a tear on her lips. Was it mine or hers? I pulled her close and held on for dear life. We were both trembling and couldn't eat our meal, and finally she said, "I want to go to your room tonight and make love. I want you to tie me up and do everything I tell you to." I said, "I love you, and whatever you want, I will do." I learned more about sex and the human body in the next 6 months than I had in 10 relationships in 20 years. This woman floated with me on magic carpets from Persia to Kansas, and I was constantly in ecstasy. As the winter moved on, my trip to Montana with Big Gene was becoming a reality. There were times that I didn't want to go for fear of losing Sherry, but I knew nothing would ever separate our special love. The week before I was to leave for Montana, Sherry called and wanted to see me on Sunday at the Logan Inn. I was excited about our love and my trip. I told her I would meet her in the Logan bar at 6 o'clock.